Imagine for a moment you are charged with a crime you did not commit. You reject a plea deal you were offered because you know you're innocent and you believe a jury will find you not guilty. Then during your trial, an expert from the crime lab presents evidence that convinces the jury of your guilt, and you are now looking at years in prison or worse. This isn't the script to a new movie. It is a scenario that has played out countless times across the United States over the past few decades. I am Dr. John Padfield. I'm a business professor, and this is Business Reform, where I discuss issues at the intersection of business, health, and the environment. In this video, I'm going to discuss corrupted evidence, cases where crime lab technicians gave false or misleading information to juries in criminal cases. Sometimes the false evidence was accidental. In some cases, it was intentional. And this is not just my opinion. We're going to look at several high-profile cases where this has happened, and crime lab technicians have been prosecuted and convicted for their actions. This is the second video in my Corrupted series. The first video was called Corrupted Science, and it examined the recent number of incidents where publishers have had to retract hundreds of peer-reviewed scientific articles due to corruption of the peer review process. I will put a link to that video at the end of this video. According to Webster's 9th edition Collegiate Dictionary, corrupted means changed from good to bad in morals, manners, or actions, degraded with unsound principles or moral values, or altered the original or correct form to become tainted or rotten. I think the word corrupted is the perfect word to describe the conditions at some crime labs across the United States over the past couple of decades. In some cases, the corruption of the crime lab was the result of one lab technician who failed to do their job properly. For instance, on June 20th, 2016, the Seattle Times reported on the case of Nika Larson, a lab technician from the Oregon State Police Lab in Bend, Oregon, whose misconduct included stealing drugs and replacing them with over-the-counter medications, not only from cases she had worked on personally, but from cases that other people in the lab had worked on. Her actions have now cast doubt on evidence presented in approximately 1,500 cases. The fact that she tampered with evidence does not mean the accused is innocent, but it certainly raises issues of reasonable doubt when the expert who processed the evidence was found guilty of tampering with that evidence. This story was covered in numerous publications, including Chemistry World. 1,500 cases are now questionable and needed to be reviewed in Oregon. But that pales in comparison to the 5,000 cases that had to be reviewed in Houston as the result of a technician at a Houston crime lab. On July 8, 2013, the Texas Observer reported on the case of Jonathan Salvador, who had worked at the Houston Forensics Lab from 2006 through 2013, when he was caught falsifying results of drug tests. He had handled evidence from nearly 5,000 criminal cases across 36 Texas counties. An appeals court ruled that all evidence that had ever passed through Salvador's custody was unreliable, and anyone convicted based on the corrupted evidence would have their convictions overturned unless there was enough untainted evidence against them to be retested. You might think 1,500 tainted cases in Oregon and 5,000 tainted cases in Texas are bad, but when it comes to crime lab scandals, Massachusetts said, "Hold my beer." Massachusetts had not just one, but two back-to-back major scandals involving their crime labs. In 2012, Annie Dukan was working in the Hinton Crime Lab in Massachusetts, where she had worked for nearly a decade. She was caught and admitted to tampering with evidence, forging test results, and then lying about it. In 2013, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison and was released in 2016. More than 21,000 cases she worked on have been dismissed. However, just months after Annie Dukan was sentenced, another Massachusetts State Crime Lab technician, Sonia Farrick, was caught stealing drugs from evidence and even stealing drug reference samples, which means that she has corrupted tests performed by other people in the lab because when they are comparing an unknown substance to a real drug, that real drug had been tampered with. She pleaded guilty in 2014 to tampering with evidence and drug theft and was sentenced to 18 months in jail. More than 16,000 cases she worked on have been dismissed. Both Annie Dukan and Sonia Farrick served what I consider to be trivial sentences for the damage they did corrupting evidence in a total of more than 36,000 criminal cases from the early 2000s. However, in September 2022, NBC News reported that a Massachusetts State Superior Court judge, in a ruling on another case, stated there is evidence that other state crime lab employees were involved in these scandals, and even more cases could potentially be overturned. So just between these 4 technicians in Oregon, Texas, and Massachusetts, we have over 43,000 criminal cases that have been tainted. Many of those individuals released. Some may have been guilty, some may have been innocent. We don't know because the evidence was tampered with. In some cases, the evidence was actually stolen. In other cases, the evidence wasn't even tested. One of those technicians admitted to forging test results for tests that they didn't even run. Those forged test results were then given to prosecutors who presented it to juries as if it were fact. I wish I could tell you these 4 incidents are the full extent of crime lab problems in the United States, but this is just the beginning. In 2012, the St. Paul Police Crime Lab was shut down for 6 months over a major scandal when an investigation found improperly maintained equipment, evidence handled by non-employees, and testing procedures that were either not documented or were routinely ignored. And in 2008, the Detroit Police Crime Lab was permanently shut down following an audit by the Michigan State Police. According to an article in the Associated Press, the state police found erroneous or false findings in 10% of the 200 randomly selected cases. They also found subpar quality compliance at the lab. The report revealed, and I quote, a shocking level of incompetence in the lab. The audit also found the lab only met 42% of the recognized work standards, even though 100% are required. So what's the point of looking at 4 lab technicians who tainted the results of 43,000 criminal prosecutions and 2 crime labs that had so many problems that they had to be shut down? Well, first of all, these examples, these 4 technicians, these 2 labs, are truly just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. In addition to links to all of the sources that I pulled my information from for this video, I have also put a link in the show notes about an article in The Atlantic where they list many, many other examples of crime labs that have had serious problems. From California to North Carolina to Colorado to Philadelphia, all over the country there have been state crime labs and city crime labs that have had problems. Many, many different states. So this is a widespread problem. But what I want you to think about is, what do all of these situations have in common? The way I look at it, every one of these situations involve experts who are either incompetent and or negligent, who handled evidence that quite literally could mean the difference between life and death for some of the defendants. Many of these experts gave testimony under oath or submitted documentation that was going to be presented as evidence in a trial regarding results that were either not properly conducted or in some cases were outright forged. Let that sink in for just a minute. These experts are trusted. They testify under oath on matters that could put a person in prison for years or in some cases even put them on death row. If people are willing to take shortcuts, lie, steal, and demonstrate a, quote, shocking level of incompetence on matters this serious, why would we expect better behavior out of experts in other fields where the stakes are lower and possibly the incentives for misconduct are higher? I have more to say about corrupted evidence, but I'm going to save that for my next video entitled Corrupted Forensics. While this video focused on corrupt lab technicians and poorly run crime labs, my next video will focus on debunked forensic science that was used for decades and is responsible for the executions of numerous innocent people. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you do that and leave a comment, you will automatically be registered for a drawing for one of 4 American-made filtered water bottles that I am giving away when my subscriber count hits the milestone shown. Thank you for watching.